Scarlett is my name. At 18 years old, I had no choice but to confront the unimaginable. I was crawling across a hospital floor in pain a few months after a vehicle accident. I was afraid I wouldn't make it. I couldn't move my legs and cried out for aid, but nothing came out. I realized I had been poisoned. This was no accident. They intended for me to perish in this place. Before we get to that dreadful time in my life, let me explain how I wound myself in the hospital in the first place. My mother was driving me home one night. We'd been RVing for a while, and I had said some awful things to her. My mother, always pretended she didn't want me at all. She had me throughout the majority of my life, but my father died a few months before this. It happened so quickly that I didn't even get to attend the burial. My mother has been strange ever since. We were having financial difficulties, and her entire demeanor shifted. She was simply cruel. She was continuously making me feel insane. After the fight was over, I began filming movies to distribute to my friends. That's when it started. Everything turned white. I was lying on the road after hearing a big crash. I was in excruciating pain. What just hit us? What occurred? After that, everything became blurry. I could hear sirens and medics. Everyone appeared to be in a state of panic. Was I going to die? I felt as if I were in a dreadful nightmare. I kept blacking out because of the discomfort. Something had to break. Many things felt broken. For a while, I was in and out. However, I recall waking up in a hospital bed. I couldn't even open my eyes. They appeared to be bloated or something. I could hear my mother speaking quietly to someone. She was discussing caskets and flowers. I wanted to call out to her and tell her I was fine, but I couldn't move or speak. What was the matter with me? That's when I heard my mother mention the word funeral. I could tell she was in tears. That's when it struck me. She was referring to my funeral. Was I going to perish? Couldn't they see I was still alive, that I was alert? I heard a lot of beeps before I could do anything. I attempted to move and do anything, but then the room became dark again. I'm not sure how much time had passed since I heard my mother's voice again. She was asking a man how much longer it would be. Was she saying until I died? Until I awoke? I needed to show her that I was fine. She had to be very concerned about me. I blinked my eyes open. I truly opened my eyes. I had the impression that I had never seen light before. The brightness of the light streaming in through the window took me aback, and it was then that I noticed my mother. I attempted to smile at her. I was Oak. She ran over to me. Her expression did not convey delight or joy. It was a mixture of surprise and fear. Did I really look that bad? I began to panic. Was my face deformed in some way? Were my limbs missing? I'd never seen her look so horrified before. When my mother arrived beside me, a loud buzzer rang out. I found myself unable to breathe. As she cried for aid, I felt my mother's hands on my chest. After that, I believe I fell asleep for quite some time. There was a nurse in my room when I awoke. She was shocked to see me alive. She informed me that I'd been in a coma for 6 months. It was impossible for me to believe. How long is it? 6 months? What had I overlooked? How did I appear? I attempted to sit up, but she simply instructed me to lie back and rest. That's when my doctor arrived. I was a little frightened when I saw him. It seemed as though the mere mention of his presence could ice a room. He exuded an aura of sophistication. He offered me a container of liquid and told me that if I drank it, I would feel better. I refused, and he thrust it into my hands, demanding that I drink it. You'd think someone would be kinder to a girl who had just awoken from a coma. I was able to fool myself into thinking I was drinking the liquid. The doctor walked away, saying he'd call my mother. I couldn't contain my excitement when I learned she was on her way. My mother entered, and after approximately 10 minutes, I hardly recognized her. She entered dressed elegantly, wearing a fur coat and carrying a high-end purse. We had been so impoverished previously. Was she the lucky winner of the lottery while I was unconscious? How much had I really missed? The doctor warned me I'd have to work to regain my strength, but I was prepared. I had been given a second chance at life, and I was determined not to squander it. Things became quite awkward over the next few days. I couldn't walk, you see. I was in a wheelchair, attempting to relearn everything. Battered and twisted, my face and nose appeared monstrous. I appeared to be a monster. And then there was the doctor. He seemed to be observing me all the while. He was quite aggressive. I began to suspect that he was out to get me. I was afraid that something horrible would happen. My biggest nightmare came true one day in therapy. What if my crutches completely fell apart while I was trying to walk? I landed hard on the ground and smashed my skull open. There was blood all over the place. The doctor was just standing there when I looked up. When my mother arrived after the incident, I informed her how strange the doctor was acting. My mother, much to my astonishment, advised me to avoid him. She even said she'd talk to the office about finding me a doctor I felt more at ease with. I was shocked. Before the accident, my mother had never done anything like that for me. I couldn't sleep that night. I was lonely, and every bone in my body hurt. I kept praying that someone would come to my aid or bring me some medicine. Of course, the doctor arrived. He brought me a cup of tea and instructed me to unwind. I was tired at first, but the tea looked so warm and inviting that I drank it. I felt a terrible pain in my stomach all of a sudden. My cup of tea shattered into a million pieces when I dropped it. Nobody came rushing in. The doctor didn't even twitch. I shouted at him. My insides are trying to crawl outside my body. It seemed as if my stomach was attempting to murder me. I thanked God that he was here, but he just shrugged. He advised me to quit overreacting and simply go to sleep. He stated that if I slept for a while, I'd feel better. What? How did this insane individual expect me to sleep in this much pain? He stood up and exited the room. I couldn't see straight. I knew I wasn't being dramatic. Something wasn't right. That is entirely incorrect. I began crawling across the earth, my legs dragging behind me. I was helpless. The agony was unbearable. I made it to the entrance of my room. That's when I noticed them. My mother and the doctor are kissing. What was going on earth? I stood at the doorway, trying not to scream and trying to listen. The doctor was discussing how much insurance money they were about to receive. My mother thanked the doctor for his assistance. What exactly had he done? In anguish, I grasped my stomach. Could I have been poisoned? As they moved away, I strained to hear what they were saying. The doctor told her they had no choice but to find my phone. There was far too much proof for it. The two entered the elevator, leaving me alone. I crawled across the floor in search of someone. Was I going to perish in this place? Alone? Was I truly poisoned by a doctor? I noticed the room around me becoming darker. With what little power I had left, I made my way into my hospital room's bathroom and pooped. I needed to get the poison out of my system, but I was in so much pain. I lay on the floor, unsure if I was going to make it. All I could think about during those few hours was my father. Would any of this have happened if he were still alive? I began to feel more normal after a few hours. So I resolved to locate my phone near the crash site. I had to find any proof that was on it. I grabbed my crutches and hailed a cab. I had to slip out the back door of the hospital. Even so, I was almost certain the doctor had seen me. I was able to hail a cab and lead him to the scene of the car accident. The railing was still crooked. I implored him to just let me go, but he insisted on helping me look. What else may be on my phone? I know I was recording at the time of the accident. Perhaps there is evidence indicating that my mother caused the crash, that she was inebriated or something. After what seemed like an eternity, I discovered my phone in a bush. I dragged it off the ground, smearing it with mud and grit. The cab driver assisted me with plugging in my phone as soon as we returned to the car. I switched it on and went into my videos. Nothing could have prepared me for the most recent video I shot. I looked regular and joyful in it. I was making a video of me singing to the radio to give to a buddy. My mother was furious beside me. Then something happened. My mother went across the table and unbuckled my seatbelt. I jumped back in surprise, but it was too late. My mother swerved the car, causing it to flip over the rails. The screen then turned blank. What I was seeing was unbelievable. My mother had crashed our automobile. But for what purpose? It all became clear to me. The nurses were surprised that I wasn't improving. My mother's new purses, she kissed the doctor. The doctor has poisoned me. The time I crashed after waking up, it was all her and the doctor's fault. I had no idea what to do. My own mother had attempted to murder me. She and the doctor purposefully put me in a coma so they could collect my insurance money. In my rage and despair, I dialed 911. The trial was brief, but my heart broke repeatedly. What's the most shocking part? My father arrived. He went into the courtroom, and as he said his name, I knew who he was. On the stand, he began speaking. My mind was racing. What the hell was going on? My father said that he had been hunting for me for a long time after his wife abandoned me for another guy. She made sure my father would never find us after she kidnapped me and used me to make money with that doctor. My father then revealed that she was not even my biological mother. She was my stepmother, posing as my mother. We didn't even have the same ancestors. I was astonished, but then I realized why she didn't care about me. She never recognized me as her biological daughter, but now everything makes sense. Despite my amazement and all that had happened, I was relieved to know that my father was finally there to care for me. I hope the woman I used to call my mother rots in prison. How did you like my betrayal and mystery story?